या देवी सर्वभूतेषु शक्तिरूपेण संस्थिता नमस्तस्यै 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 namo namah. Imagine this. You're standing alone in the battlefield, not in some ancient myth, but right here in today's world. Around you, a ruthless dictator tightens their grip. A tech monopoly crushes competition. An endless swarm of threats keeps regenerating no matter how many times you take it down. You have powerful weapons and skills at your disposal, but is that enough? War is not just about strength, it's about strategy. And in our ancient Sanatan texts, Durga Saptashati, the battle between Ma Durga and Mahishasura, Shumbh-Nishumbh, and their generals don't just hold spiritual and metaphorical significance of how Ma destroys our deformities, they are also a masterclass in military tactics that still hold relevance today. Want to know how? Let's find out. In Durga Saptashati, each Asura that Devi fought had a distinct warfare style, and Devi countered each with her sheer genius. So we have divided this topic into 6 videos. This video gives a brief overview on battle styles of Mahishasura, Dhumralochan, Chanda-Munda, Raktabeeja and Shumbh-Nishumbh, and the following 5 videos will focus on how Ma devises her strategy and counterattacks to vanquish them. This overview aims to provide a perspective on strengths and weaknesses of the opponents that Ma Durga has to fight, because only if we understand our enemies, we would be able to vanquish them. So don't forget to subscribe, as we have a great lineup ahead and I promise you it would be worth it. Mahishasura was not just a warrior, he was an unpredictable force. His ability to shapeshift into different forms made him a nightmare to fight. He relied on brute force and psychological intimidation, charging like a wild buffalo, adapting like a lion, and overpowering enemies with sheer unpredictability. So we can identify him under 3 tactical styles. First, shapeshifting, where he is constantly changing forms and making it hard for enemies to anticipate his attacks. This is very similar to groups like Hamas, Taliban or ISIS, using non-traditional tactics, blending into civilian populations, attacking when least expected, and constantly shifting strategies to evade conventional military responses. Second, brute force and rampage. Since he had a large army and buffalo was his favorite form, he just charged at his enemies and created chaos to scatter forces. This shows similarity with Nazi Germany's Blitzkrieg strategy, where the German military used fast mechanized assaults to overpower France and Poland before they could respond. And third, endurance warfare. Since his transformations allowed him to recover and continue fighting, he engaged in a long, exhaustive battle against Devi. His constant transformations frustrated and prolonged the fight, aiming to wear down Devi. This strategy shows similarity with the current attrition strategy used by Russia against Ukraine, where instead of a quick invasion, they are choosing a long-term endurance war, testing Ukraine's economic and military stamina. Dhumralochan's strategy? Break Devi Durga's will even before fighting. He threatened her, demanded surrender, and believed that sheer intimidation would force her to yield. So his style would fall under 2 categories: verbal threats and psychological manipulation, as he demanded Devi to surrender, trying to weaken her morale, and direct charge and intimidation, as relying on his massive strength, he charged at Devi head-on, assuming a quick victory. They both show similarity to US imposing sanctions and Trump's tariff threats, especially during the US-China trade war, which can be interpreted as a form of psychological intimidation used to pressure and coerce other nations into compliance with US demands, as tariffs are a way to use economic power to create fear, signaling the potential economic consequences for countries that do not adhere to US stance. Chanda-Munda were masters of guerrilla warfare. Instead of fighting head-on, they launched hit-and-run attacks, surrounded Devi's forces, and created battlefield chaos. So their styles would fall under hit-and-run attacks, as they sent waves of small fleets of warriors to wear Durga down instead of attacking in one go. Similar to how Taliban used hit-and-run tactics against the superior US military. They launched quick ambushes, roadside bombings, and sniper attacks, and then disappeared into mountains. They also used ambush and surround strategy, where they encircled her and limited her mobility. Similar to how ISIS and Al-Qaeda groups would ambush US military convoys and urban warfare using terrain to their advantage. They often pretended to retreat, then surrounded and attacked these military forces, and finally doing multiple attacks at once, where they used a combination of archers, cavalry, and infantry to create battlefield chaos to divide Devi's attention and resources. Raktabeeja's strategy is one of the most interesting and lethal kinds. He used regenerative warfare. Every drop of his blood that touched the ground created a new version of himself, turning the battle into an endless war of attrition. So his style would fall under, first, infinite reinforcements, where traditional attacks made him stronger, akin to ISIS and Al-Qaeda's regenerative network. Even when their terrorist leader dies, new leaders emerge and sleeper cells remain active. Psychological warfare, where he demoralized the enemy every time he multiplied, akin to China's salami slicing strategy in the South China Sea. China expands its territories inch by inch through artificial islands, military bases, and aggressive diplomacy, and makes it psychologically exhausting for small nations, as there's no single battle to fight, only endless minor conflicts. And finally, war of attrition, where he wore down the enemy and exhausted their time and resources, like the Taliban used attrition warfare to outlast US forces in Afghanistan. Instead of winning the battle, they stretched the battle for 20 years, forcing the US to eventually withdraw. Shumbh-Nishumbh played the long-term strategic warfare. Before attacking, they tried diplomacy, offering Devi a political alliance through marriage, similar to how Akbar involved in matrimonial alliances with Rajput kingdoms. When that failed, they switched to elite warrior deployment and adaptive fighting, which is best to be covered in more detail in our upcoming videos. So, Mahishasura is unpredictable. Dhumrilochan believes in brute force. Chanda-Munda are guerrilla warfare experts. Raktabeeja is the epitome of attrition warfare. And Shumbh-Nishumbh exemplify multi-phase warfare. In our next videos, we are going to analyze in depth the sheer brilliance of Devi, how she counterattacks each of these strategies, and what are their modern parallels. Stay tuned to this channel, and if you found this breakdown insightful, like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into war strategies, both ancient and modern.